Something about this lighting is making my roots very obvious. Look at that line. Oh my god. Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about 13 winter horror movies, not to be confused with Christmas horror movies. They are very different, although similar in ways. Obviously, you can enjoy both subgenres of horror during this winter season / Christmas season. I guess it's not winter everywhere during Christmas, right? Southern Hemisphere. So I've made a top 10 Christmas horror movies list already. I made it last year, so it's still very relevant. I still stand by every movie on that list, and those are the movies that I am rewatching this December. So I will link that video up here in case you need more movie recommendations for your Christmas season. But today we're talking about winter horror movies, which are also great to watch throughout February and March, however long it's cold for you, or I guess if you just want to watch winter horror movies throughout March. I mean, I live in California, so it doesn't stay cold for that long. But this list contains 13 horror movies, kind of a random number for me on this channel, but I couldn't narrow it down and I couldn't do 15. So I could do 15, but I didn't want to. I'm going to talk about 13. These are the 13 ones that I recommend. Lots of snow and cold and just winter goodness in all of these movies. But before we get into all of that, I just want to thank Shudder for sponsoring today's video. Shudder is, of course, a premium streaming service for all things horror, thriller, and suspense, and has the fastest growing collection with new horror added every single week. Their collection includes blockbuster hits, horror classics, and original and exclusive content such as Vicious Fun, The Mortuary Collection, and PG Psycho Gorman. Shudder has all the best horror documentaries and, of course, the hit Creepshow TV series from executive producer Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead. Of course, Shudder has all of the best streaming holiday horror movies right now, including the original classic Black Christmas, as well as their new exclusive to Shudder horror movie called The Advent Calendar. One of my favorite Christmas movies of all time that I just recently watched on Shudder the other day, or rewatched on Shudder, it is streaming on there, is Better Watch Out. Highly recommend if you have not seen that yet. It's probably one of the least predictable movies I've ever seen, with so many surprises, so it will definitely catch you off guard. So you can stream all the best horror, thriller, and supernatural content completely ad-free on all of your devices, including iOS and Android, Xbox One, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Google Chromecast, all for $5.99 a month or $56.99 per year. Or of course, you could try Shudder for free for 30 days if you go to shudder.com and use my code POSSESSED30. All right, the lighting is off. I gotta fix that. Too bright. That's fine. We're just gonna go with that. First up on my list that is not ranked by any means or not in any order in particular is Pontypool from 2008. I always talk about this movie whenever I get a chance to because it is highly underrated and I love it. This Canadian psychological thriller follows disc jockey Grant Mazzy, who has just learned about a zombie virus that is being transmitted, so he barricades himself in his radio station. This is hands down one of the best / one of my favorite zombie movies of all time. I'm not huge into the zombie genre, but I like when zombie movies will be original with their concepts. That's why I like Overlord. I think that's a great movie as well. Not really wintry, so, you know, I'm just saying it's an original zombie movie, as well as Pontypool. Pontypool just does it so right. It's a low budget type indie movie, and it is just highly underrated. Obviously, it's in Canada, so there's lots of snow, lots of winterness going on in Pontypool. Next up, this list would not be complete without The Thing, the original from 1982. Now, I know it's not the original. I know it is a remake within itself. Every time I talk about The Thing, everyone comments, did you know that it's a remake too? Like, I do know that. Have not seen the original. Not really my era of horror, so I know I'm not going to prefer it to this one, so I just kind of stick with the classics to me, and that being one of them is The Thing from 1982. This is set in remote Antarctica and follows a group of research scientists who take in a dog that attacks one of their own, and they soon realize that the beast can shift into the shape of its victims. Fantastic alien movie, easily one of the best alien movies, done completely with practical effects, and I've gone into detail about why this movie is fantastic so many times on my channel. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, specifically because of the horror elements and because it's all done with practical effects. That makes it one of the best in my opinion, and one of the like classic horror movies that I think everyone should watch. Now, I do want to throw in The Thing remake. Do I call it a remake? I don't want to spoil anything. I know it's not a remake. I know the new one is not a remake, but don't say what it is. I'm just trying to avoid spoilers. Anyway, watch the new one too with Mary Elizabeth Winstead. That one's great. Not done practically, although they did film it practically and then decided to go with CGI last minute. Not sure why they did that. Wasted a lot of money on that. but it's still a great movie. I still really enjoy that one. Not as good as the original, of course, but both wintry, both good winter horror movies. The next one is the newest release on this list, and probably a controversial one because I enjoyed it a lot and I do want to talk about it, but I know it's not for everyone, and that is the new Paranormal Activity movie, Next of Kin. This found footage horror movie follows Margot, who returns to an Amish village with a documentary crew searching for answers about her mother and extended family. Like I said, not for everyone. It's not really a traditional Paranormal Activity movie, so if you haven't seen it yet because of that, don't let that turn you off to it, because I think it's very unique and kind of separated from the franchise. It does feel like it has a place in the franchise, but it doesn't really connect back to any of them. It's kind of shot in a similar way to Taking of Deborah Logan and Last Exorcism. I've mentioned that before, but if you like those movies, you'd probably like Paranormal Activity Next of Kin. Next up, we have Devil's Pass from 2013. It is also known on the internet as the Dyatlov Pass incident, I think. So if you can't find it under Devil's Pass, try the Dyatlov Pass incident. So this underrated horror movie follows a group of US college students who return to the location where Russian hikers were all found dead in the snow. This is based on a real case where hikers left their tents and their bodies were found scattered amongst their campsite on this like mountainside covered in snow. And these college students are kind of filming a documentary style movie about this incident and go to the location in Russia. This is definitely, it's underrated, and you know, it's not the best movie on this list, I'm gonna say. It's kind of more of an indie movie, definitely low budget, but obviously has amazing winter vibes, a lot of snow and everything going on. I think it's a really decent movie. It's not the best, but definitely give it a try. I know I'm really selling you on that one. It's good. I like this one a lot. I'm going to be rewatching it in December. Next up, we have one of my favorites on this list, hands down. Again, I feel like this list would be incomplete without it, and that is Misery from 1990. This movie, of course, follows an author who suffers a serious car accident and is rescued by nurse Annie Wilkes, who also happens to be his #1 fan. This is a classic Stephen King adaptation. I don't really need to go into why this movie is fantastic, but obviously snow. Great winter horror movie, one of the best, if not the best. It's probably my favorite winter horror movie. It's definitely my favorite Stephen King adaptation. So next is a movie I've talked about quite a lot on this channel, and you probably know why. That is Frozen from 2010. This follows 3 friends who become stranded on a ski lift high above the ground after a ski resort closes for the weekend. This movie is described as a survival horror, and it's definitely a really effective lower budget type movie. It's one of those like stranded in a single location type movies, which is, I think, the best way and most effective way to do a low budget simple story and still make it really effective horror wise. This one makes me so tense and anxious when I watch this. Even rewatching it and I know everything that happens, it still is effective in having that tension for me. So it's one of my favorite winter horror movies, hands down. Next is a movie that I just rewatched last night, actually. Again, it'd been a minute since I rewatched this one. Such a good winter horror movie. Oh my gosh, so good. And that is, of course, 30 Days of Night from 2007. Again, like zombie movies, I think vampire movies are a tad overdone and pretty predictable, but I think 30 Days of Night is one of those that are unique. I really like the look of the vampires in this movie. I just think it is one of the better vampire type movies. But for the more modern zombie vampire stories, I need some originality. I need something unique and different, and I think 30 Days of Night is effective in doing that. I think Josh Hartnett and Melissa George have amazing performances in this. I really enjoy Melissa George's acting, and she's in some of my favorite early 2000s movies like Triangle, Amityville Horror, of course. This is probably like the most winter movie. If you want winter, this is the winter movie, right? Well, and The Thing, because it's set in Antarctica, but this is set in an Alaskan town where they don't have sunlight for 30 days straight because they're at the northernmost town livable, or habitable, I should say. Obviously a perfect setting for a vampire movie. So I think it's great. It's really creative. Next is a recent watch for me. It's a first viewing for me, I think. I swear when I was like halfway through this, I was like, have I seen this? This all feels so familiar, and I like knew when certain things would happen. So when I say this movie's predictable, It might be because I've seen it before. I don't know. But that is Wind Chill. It is an early mid-2000s movie from 2007. So I loved the essence of it. It's my typical kind of movie that I gravitate towards. This follows two strangers who are carpooling home for the holidays when they become stranded on a deserted road. I don't want to say any more than that, but I will say this movie, although predictable in the end, was very unexpected. Like, you don't anticipate what kind of movie it turns into. The way it's set up with these two strangers, a male and a female together in a car, it kind of feels one type of way, but then it like completely switches directions. So it's very unexpected in that way. However, the end does become cheesy and predictable once you're already like in it. You know pretty much what's going to happen. Again, it could be because I've seen it before. I'm not 100% sure. This has Emily Blunt in it and Ashton Holmes, who I think were great casting choices. I really loved them in these roles. So highly recommend checking out Wind Chill. Next is a movie I've talked about semi-recently a couple times on this channel actually, and that is The Blackcoat'S Daughter. This follows two students that stay behind at their boarding school during the winter. However, they are haunted by an unseen evil force there. This movie is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's A24. It's artistic. I mean, if you want a beautiful winter movie, this is going to be probably the most beautiful one, I think. Well, we got one other that's like gorgeous, and we'll get to that. This one's very atmospheric though. So if you want the ultimate like winter atmosphere with like haunting visuals and story, this one is amazing. I've mentioned this before, but it's definitely one that you can't just throw on and casually watch. You really have to be invested in this one. So if you're in the mood to sit down and really immerse yourself in a movie, this is the one. The Blackcoat'S Daughter is the one. Next up, we have Orphan from 2009. This, of course, follows a couple who decide to adopt Esther. However, soon after bringing her home, they begin to suspect something evil is lurking under her innocent facade. Of course, we have Orphan 2 coming out in 2022. Very nervous about that one. But I don't need to explain Orphan really to you about why I love it. It's just, I think, a great story. It's very chilling. It's one of those, like, evil kid stories, with obviously a fantastic twist that had a lot of people like really shocked by. Next up, we have another movie that I rewatched yesterday because I had forgotten a lot of details about it, and it's just a stunning visual and amazing winter horror movie, and that is Crimson Peak. This follows a young woman who marries a charming man and moves into his remote gothic mansion with his sister, and she begins to have ghostly visions and soon unveils the truth. This doesn't really get too wintry until about halfway through. It's still kind of in the winter season, but it doesn't get like really snowy until about halfway through, or a little bit over halfway. But obviously this fits into the perfect type of winter horror movie for the Christmas season because it is just so beautiful. I mean, if you want like a gothic winter with like a mansion and like period piece and amazing clothes and fashion, you gotta watch Crimson Peak. This, of course, is done by Guillermo del Toro. He wrote it and directed it, and no one does horror like him, in my opinion. He has some of the best horror interpretations and creative visions that I have ever seen. Obviously, he's my favorite director / horror writer ever, so I'm a little bit biased. And while the horror elements in this are very... I got a package, I think. They were just messing with my wreath. He saw me. Oh my god. He like pointed at my door. As I was saying, the horror elements are very mild in this, but what you do get is very horrifying. However, the ghosts don't really play into the actual horror of this story, but you just have to watch it if you haven't yet. I assume many people have, but if it's been a while, I'm here to remind you this movie exists, and it's absolutely beautiful. So the last mention that I want to give in this list is not actually a movie at all, but a TV show of The Terror from 2018, specifically season 1. The show follows the Royal Navy when their ship becomes frozen in the Northern Passage, where they must fight to survive the harsh conditions and each other. This show is super underrated. It is one of my favorite horror shows that I've ever seen in my life. I think it is one of the most effective slow burn, like build up horror that I've ever seen, because when you're watching it, it takes so long to really get to the super horrific elements, and then once you're there, you're like, how do we even get here? Like, it's one of those gradual buildups that are just so good. There's a lot of horror elements going on here too. It's obviously they're stranded, so they're surviving. They obviously have to survive each other. There's also supernatural elements going on and things hunting them. So there's a lot to unpack with this show. Like, there's just so much in it, and I want to talk about it every time I can get a chance to, because even though it's not a movie, it's a really effective winter horror show. So there you have my top 13 winter horror movies / one TV show, 12 movies, one show, for all of your winter needs this winter. How many times am I gonna say winter? For all of your winter horror needs this season and for Christmas. Again, if you want some Christmas horror movie recommendations, check out my past video. It's still relevant, still the same, still recommend all of those. Let me know your favorite winter / Christmas horror movie that you are rewatching in the month of December down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.